Howdy! In this Week 2 video, we will be looking at the laws of thermodynamics, photosynthesis and cellular respiration, energy budgets, and natural hazards. The student learning objectives of this video are: explain the first and second laws of thermodynamics and how these are related to food chains and resource availability. Briefly explain the overall process of photosynthesis and cellular respiration and the importance of these processes to life on Earth. Explain how energy is transferred through trophic levels, including in the explanation the terms autotroph, primary producer, heterotroph, primary consumer, secondary consumer, and tertiary consumer. Briefly explain how humans increase the impact of various natural hazards. The first law of thermodynamics is the law of conservation of energy, meaning that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be converted from one form to another. In this figure, you can see the sun has transferred energy to the plants, which are also called autotrophs or primary producers. Autotrophs are organisms that create their own food from inorganic substances. Those autotrophs have used photosynthesis to convert solar energy into chemical energy, which is in the form of plant biomass. This biomass is then consumed by primary consumers, in this figure, the grasshopper. Grasshoppers and every other consumer above primary producers are considered heterotrophs because they must obtain food by consuming other organisms. The grasshopper is eaten by the rodent, which is in turn eaten by the hawk. The green lines represent chemical energy, which is food, and the red arrows are heat. Notice heat is lost during this process. The thickness of the arrows represents the amount of energy being transferred. The second law of thermodynamics is a law of entropy. This law states that energy moves from a more ordered state to a less ordered state. Entropy is essentially disorder. As energy goes through this process, less energy is available for use. Organisms maintain a highly ordered state by consuming food. In this figure, there is potential energy in the logs in the form of chemical bonds in the wood. As the logs burn, energy is released in the form of heat and light. When there are only charred remains, there is more entropy and less energy available. Photosynthesis is the process by which autotrophs, such as plants, convert sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide into oxygen and sugar. The process consists of the light reaction and the dark reaction, which is also called the Calvin cycle. In the light reaction, water and sunlight are used to create adenosine triphosphate, also known as ATP, and NADPH. NADPH is an electron carrier. This molecule carries electrons harvested in the light reaction to the Calvin cycle. The Calvin cycle uses these electrons, the ATP, and carbon dioxide to create sugars. Sugars represent chemical energy, which is also potential energy. The light reaction and the Calvin cycle work together because the products of one are required for the process of the other. Without both, photosynthesis cannot occur unless there has been an adaptation in the plant. For example, plants adapted to hot and dry conditions, such as pineapple plants, have slightly modified versions of this cycle. Cellular respiration is the process by which the chemical energy in food is used to perform work in an organism. You'll notice that the equation for cellular respiration, seen at the bottom of this slide, is the equation of photosynthesis flipped. And cellular respiration sugars, represented here by C6H12O6, are combined with oxygen and are used to create energy for work. In the process of this energy conversion, the potential energy in the sugars is converted to power some processes or movement of an organism, while also producing the byproducts of water and carbon dioxide. Notice that the products of cellular respiration are required for photosynthesis and vice versa. Without plants, we would not have the oxygen or food we need to survive. Most organisms require oxygen to function, including fish. As you're probably aware, fish obtain their oxygen through their gills. The oxygen they consume is in the form of dissolved oxygen, which is abbreviated DO. Like other organisms, fish and other aquatic life require a certain concentration of oxygen to survive. Hypoxic conditions are when dissolved oxygen has dropped below 2 to 3 milligrams per liter. Anoxic conditions are when there's absolutely zero dissolved oxygen in the water. Hypoxic and anoxic conditions can be caused by a variety of factors. One of the consequences of hypoxic or anoxic conditions is a fish kill, as can be seen in this slide. We will discuss hypoxic conditions in more detail later in the semester. So why does all of this matter to you? Well, I presume you like to eat and breathe, and you require energy. Well, all of these things can be traced back to photosynthesis, cellular respiration, and the laws of thermodynamics. The food that you eat represents potential energy. The potential energy is stored in glucose molecules in the food. At some point, that food is used to either power the processes of your body or help you move and function in other ways. This conversion of energy from potential energy to kinetic energy is only possible because we have also breathed in oxygen, which is made available by plants. So it is clear that we are wholly dependent on autotrophs for the fundamental molecules that allow us to live. A key concept of the laws of thermodynamics is energy transfer. Energy transfer, as we saw previously, is not efficient. In fact, 90% of energy available in one form is lost as heat as it moves up the food chain. Each level of the food chain is called a trophic level. The lowest trophic level is comprised of primary producers or autotrophs. The levels of the food web after primary producer are primary consumer or herbivore, secondary consumer or carnivore, and tertiary consumer. Tertiary consumers are also carnivores. As energy moves through the food chain, only 10% makes it to the next trophic level, so that by the time you reach the tertiary consumer, only a very small fraction of the original energy available in the autotrophs has been retained. Therefore, it takes a massive amount of primary producers to support a large population of tertiary consumers. Notice how many more primary consumers can be supported compared to tertiary consumers, given the same base of primary producers. Think about how this relates to your own diet. Where do you eat on the food chain? What do you think is the most energy efficient and sustainable diet a human could follow? One of the critical thinking activities for this week will be to analyze your diet and to think about how your diet influences both food availability and your ecological footprint. You can read in Chapter 2 about various natural disasters. You're probably already aware of most of these disasters. What you might not have thought about much, though, is how we as humans influence natural disasters, and in some ways make them worse. In this slide, you can see the aftermath of the earthquake in Haiti in 2010 in the top left, a wildfire in the bottom left, the flooding that occurred throughout Texas in the summer of 2015, and a landslide in California in the bottom right. Although all of these events are natural, our actions can often influence their magnitude. For example, many people choose to live on the coasts because of their scenic beauty. However, development in these areas can lead to coastal erosion. Coasts are also subject to hurricanes and tsunamis. When humans settle an area, they inevitably engineer the landscape. As we cover the land surface with impermeable surfaces, such as concrete or asphalt, we increase the risk and magnitude of floods. We also build dams and levees to control water. However, this backfires and can cause catastrophic flooding, as we've seen in New Orleans and Dallas during Hurricane Katrina. When we suppress wildfires, we ensure that when fires do come, they will be much more severe. People also enjoy living in mountainous regions, but as we settle and build on steep slopes, we increase the risk and magnitude of landslides. Mining practices, agricultural development, and other human activities also increase the risks of landslides. Finally, as we continue to burn fossil fuels, we are emitting greenhouse gases that cause global climate change. The consequences of this have been, among other things, altered patterns of precipitation, stronger storms, and rising temperatures in some areas. While these may seem minor, they have far-reaching effects for generations to come. We will discuss global climate change in greater depth later in the semester. That concludes the mini lecture on the laws of thermodynamics, photosynthesis, cellular respiration, and natural disasters. Please review the weekly outline and complete the activities for this week per the schedule set forth in the outline. Thanks and gig 'em!